right, everybody. Keith Harding sent me this picture of this cool looking little young man right here. And he asked me, he said he saw some images on my website. And he said, I want to know how you do that crazy high key image where it has, you know, it's white, but it's lacking, it has detail, but it's just white everywhere. And so I told him, send me a picture and I'll make you a movie and now we'll all get the benefit. So this is straight off the camera, what you're looking at here. You know, I took out any color mix or any basics, adjustment, set it to straight 5500 Kelvin, and there you go. Here you have that basic image. So let's begin. Some of the things that I would do is you want the image to be from the raw conversion as close to what you want as possible. So one of the first things you do, you start cranking up the highlights. Now you notice when you crank up the highlights down here, right in here in his clothes, you can start losing details. You want to crank it up, but then you want to stop because you don't want to lose any of that complete loss of detail. That was the highlights. Now same thing with the white. See, when it starts bringing in that red, that's where you're starting to lose detail. So we don't want to lose detail. Now with the shadows, same thing. You want to crank up the shadows to where, you know, the shadow side, you know, the dark areas like in here and in here, those are really getting white, but you want to maintain highlights in his shirt here. So we're going to stop right about there, but because we want to do blacks next. So when I crank up the blacks, you can tell he gets real gray, real kind of, you know, gray, I don't know, fuzzy almost like. All right. Now take down my highlights and whites because I still want to keep that detail in his shirt. Okay. So now I have this nice grayed up image. Now to compensate for that, you bring in a little clarity. See, crank up that clarity a little bit. And at this point, you might want to crank up the blacks a little bit more, crank up the shadow a little bit more, maybe reduce the highlights, whatever. Just kind of start tweaking it a little bit back and forth. Now, I have a preset that I typically start out at, okay? Not for this high key thing, but I wanted to show you that part of it, and then I'm just going to do it. So I'm going to change, I'm going to come over to my default preset. Oops, wrong. This is my default preset, which kind of gets everything set initially the way I want it. One thing it does do is it puts in a vignette. So I want to go in and I want to remove the vignette. So I actually have a preset that takes the vignette off to make my life even faster. Now, at this point is where this would be my base starting point. You notice I cranked up the vibrance and the saturation a little bit. I put in a little clarity. So now at this point, I'm just going to put all that stuff that I just showed you right there, about right on the edge of where I had it before. Right up in there. Clarity, yeah, right about there. So, okay, so that gets us really kind of close. I might want to crank up the contrast just a little bit. Because and the exposure too. I want exposure up. So now he's really starting to get on the edge. And I tell you what, shadow and black all the way. He's really getting right up here on the edge where we're starting to lose detail. So at this point, you know, we would open that image in Photoshop. Now I already have to save us some time, I already did a basic raw conversion right here. All right, and so here it is. I might have added a little bit more crazy color in it and things like that. But basically, you can see that when you convert it from the raw file, you have a white child. His skin is white. You're losing detail in the eyes and, you know, everything. And what you next want to do is you want to lighten up any of the shadows. So here's a neat little trick. Click on your dodge tool, put it in shadow mode, and make sure protected tones is checked and the exposure at 100. Now, whenever you wipe it over a dark area, it lightens it up kind of slowly. So like that, the dark area in his hair, down here on the bottom of his shirt, the edge of his skin, on his neck, we're just going to kind of wipe in these areas right in here. And what we're trying to do is we're lightening up all those shadows, okay? The next thing I would want to do is I want to literally lose detail down here in where in other words, it creates a nice little white vignette. So to do that, I change it from shadow mode to midtones, take off protected tones, a nice big brush, and I'm going to wipe down here until I completely lose it on his arms and body. Like that. All right. Now I might turn on protected tones for just a minute, just to kind of make that transition a little bit smooth right in there. Okay. The next thing is I kind of feel like this needs to be vertical. That's just me. So we're going to go with a vertical. So let's kind of get him cropped in about right there. I'm thinking that looks better. Okay, very good. All right, so that gets us pretty close. Now, I have an action that I've created called Perfect Soft. You can actually get it on the Pro Forum. If you're a member, it's free for downloading for all members. But I'll show you what it does. When I run the Perfect Soft action, the first thing it does is it runs portraiture, okay? And so with portraiture, I click on the skin because I want to make sure I'm doing skin. But of course, this is a blonde-headed kid, so it's going to do his hair too. Click OK, and it runs portraiture. The next thing it does is it stops and it says how much of that softening effect, puts a fade in. So we're going to crank it up pretty high. Next, it puts in a warming action that I've created. That's all part of it. And like you don't want him to turn orange, but you don't want him to stay way down here either. So you need a little bit of warmth in there. Next, it puts in a little bit of what I call snap. It just basically makes the darks a little bit darker and the whites just a little bit whiter. Now watch, it's kind of a clarity thing. So you could crank it way up or you could take it way down. So we're going to kind of put it somewhere right in there. And then the last thing it does is levels. Now here's a neat thing a lot of people don't know about. Probably if you've watched any of these videos that I've done, you know it. But if you hold down your Alt or Option key while adjusting the left side slider, it gives you a graphical display of which pixels are being affected. So when you start seeing the shape of his face, you are messing up way too many pixels. So I want you to back way off of that, right when the eyes just start to come in, okay? The next thing I want you to do is, well, when you touch the white side, you see how you already have red in his skin? Don't touch it anymore. You don't want to affect any of those pixels. But I do want you to mess with this middle slider. And Keith, here's the real big secret of this whole thing, is all of this leads up to this middle slider. And I think when you move this middle slider, you're going to start seeing the effect that you're looking for. And you can have a lot of it, like way out over here, okay? Or you can have just a little bit. And it's kind of a, you know, adjust to taste kind of thing. So I'm going to go right about in here is what I like. Because, you know, as you can tell, you still see a nice shape of the face. The eyes are really popping, and we're going to make them pop even more. And you can still see a shape of the body. All right? Click OK. Next, before we go any further, I want to tweak these eyeballs. So I'm going to paint out that middle dot on which is the fill light in his eyes. And I'm going to paint that right out. Oh, I'm not painting at 100%. Let me paint it 100%. Paint that dot right out. Go back to our dodge tool, mid-tones, take protected tones off. A little extra highlight in the catch light. Add a little swoosh to the opposite side of the catch light. Hold down your Alt or Option key, which turns it into a burn tool, and burn in that black on those little tiny edges right there. And then something with this color eyes, what I typically like to do is come over here to my sponge tool, and it's in saturate mode and vibrance is checked, and I just kind of give those colored part of his eyes just a little bit of a rub. All right, and because I can, you know, I don't know, if this was my client, I would have asked if they like those moles and that scratch on his face and things like that, but we're going to take those out. All right. So now you're starting to see, again, probably when you look at this, you're like, oh yeah, that's the effect that I was talking about. All right, well, we're not done. You really need to, at this point, run portraiture one more time Filter, Imagenomics, Portraiture. Click on the skin. This time we're just going to leave it alone and run curves at this point. Command or Control M. Now when you run curves, you're going to come up here in the upper 1/3 area and you're just going to kind of start pushing up until you're like, oh no, I went too far. Okay, right about there. Then you're going to come down here in that lower 1/3 area. You're going to push down until you get a nice contrast effect, which is about there. And it's just, see, you're just making a little tiny S curve, just a little bit. Click OK. Now, curves, the problem with curves sometimes shifts color around. So I want you to go Command-Shift-F, which brings up fade, and change the mode from normal to luminosity. And now that puts it back to the right color as far as his skin goes. All right? And at this point, I want you to run levels one more time. Command or Control L. And this time you don't have to hold the Alt Option key because we're just doing it visual. We're gonna bring the left side slider until we get the nice little detail in the edges and part of his face. The right side, we already know that ain't going nowhere, but the middle slider, we're gonna slide a little bit to the left. Yep, right about there. And I think this is the effect that you're talking about that you saw on my website. Now, one thing I did notice is he seems to be, because of all this crazy tweaking and stuff, a little bit soft. He may have been soft before. So I have an action, Command F9, that brings in a little bit of sharpening. Wait, why did that not work? Command F9. There we go. A little bit of sharpening, which I think will help it just a little bit. And there. I'm going to say we're done. So I hope this helps you, Keith. I hope this was what you were looking for. But that's the sequence of events. And it's kind of like layering or doing levels and curves over and over and over to get to this effect. If you got questions, buddy, don't hesitate to ask. I hope this helps. And you guys have a great day. Bye-bye.